What is up, everyone? Welcome back to Disclosure Team with me, your host, Vinny Adams. The following is part 2 of my conversation with Mario Woods. Mario joined me a few weeks ago to talk about his experience while working at Ellsworth Air Force Base. If you haven't seen part 1, I highly recommend you go and watch that first before watching this video here. As always, if you enjoy these videos, please just take time out to subscribe, like the video, and if you want, comment down below and share it with your friends. I hope you enjoy part 2 with Mario Woods.
Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army.
However, there have been a certain percentage of this volume of reports that have been made by credible observers of relatively incredible things.
There is very compelling evidence that we may not be alone, whatever that means.
There's a whole fleet of them. Look on the ASA. Look at that thing, dude.
American public and global public finally understands UFOs are real.
Non-human, exotic origin, vehicles that have either landed or crashed.
Mario, I'd like to welcome you back to the show for this part 2. How's things been? It's been nearly a month since we spoke.
Yeah, just a lot of things going on. Traveling some next month and doing some really cool things and just having some fun. Been to the range, doing some range work with my son and working on my motorcycle and some other stuff and some hobbies and, you know, RC cars, got to do all that. So, and my new drone, I got a DJI Mini 4 and man, that thing it's unbelievable what it'll do. I could probably never use all of its abilities, far outweigh what I'm able to do with it. So, but it's really a learning curve for that. I came from a different DJI, a 2 Pro, and to this 4, which has object avoidance, which is really a nice attribute to have because, you know, distance really will tell on you when you're navigating or piloting one of these drones. Of course, this drone does not have to be registered as it's under the 249 gram weight limit. So that's really nice. And I live very close to an airport here. So, you know, my time flying is, of course, my elevation is decreased and not my flying time, but a lot of times when aircraft take off, private mostly, there's some commercial, but it'll automatically go to a landing, return to home sequence, you know, which is okay too, because you got a clear area for that and have a big yard. And I can fly I mean, it's got a 12-mile range, so it says, but I've never taken it out that far. That's really something to buy commercially, be able to have something that can reach out 5, 6, 8 miles from where you're standing, you know, and come back taking photos or videos or whatever, you know. So anyway, that's really a lot of fun.
No, fantastic. Thank you. And just before we go into the first question, for anybody watching this, please remember that this is part 2. So if you haven't seen part 1 where Mario talks about his initial experience, please go back and watch that one first. So Mario, you know, like I said, we talked about your story. We went in depth. So I'd like to go straight into kind of the days and weeks following the event. You know, where you, it must have still been on your mind to some degree. Were you talking about it at work or even with friends and family?
Yeah. First part of that question being people at work that don't know you or just know of you, you know, frequent your same area that you're in or something. But yeah, I get questions, you know, and I'm always open to, you know, to answering any questions that I'm asked, which I am. A lot of people are kind of nervous about asking that, thinking that it'll upset a person, or really, I'm not sure they're ready for the answers they might receive, is a better way of putting it. So they kind of will ask questions from afar, or ask questions that are disassociated in a way from the subject matter, and then try to come back to it in just little snippets, you know. So I just kind of say, look, you want to talk about this? Let's just, you and I go sit down. Nobody else will know. And whatever you want to ask me, you ask me, and I'll tell you whatever you need, you know, whatever you want to know. So, family, my children have no problem with it whatsoever. My wife, I think she wants to see one. She's never seen anything remotely in the UAP or UFO world. She watches the programs, but she's not seen anything as of yet. And of course, she probably questions me more than anybody at any given time. But of course, it happened at a time before her and I anyway. But still, she has a lot of questions. She knew. I told her in 1996, 95 or 96. So, and that's when she first knew of it. And we had been married already 10 years. So I held that for quite some time working for DOE because, as I said, I never, well, with the exception of one guy that he was a martial arts instructor, a sensei, still a really close friend of mine. He's the only one I've ever told outside of what I was told in Commander Spraker's office that day. So, talking about NDAs, as we've given that term to everything today, in 77, I don't think there was, I'm really not sure if what I signed was called an NDA or not. It was just the report that I understood was classified and it could not be spoken about in any other area except with the people in that room ever, or as long as I was in that career field. And that held over to US DOE, or as long as I was in the nuclear program or PRP under the Personnel Reliability Program. And I fulfilled my end of it until I was no longer Q cleared or carrying a weapon in association with, any nuclear facilities, national security complexes, or with DOD. So I think I did the right thing. But what I wanted to get at is people always talk about NDAs, and I guess there's a nomenclature for that, an NDA, a non-disclosure agreement. And I think anything that you sign, even though this had a form number to it, on it, within the Air Force, it didn't seem to be out of the ordinary for anything classified and not to be talked about or discussed. I'd heard of them before, but I never thought that I would be associated with one or involved in one. So I just want to say that. So I don't know, like what David Grush has or what he signed or Lou or anybody else signed. I only know what was presented to me by OSI, and again, my Commander's Breaker. So I just wanted to say that because people said, have asked me questions pertaining to what you just asked me, had I, how people asked me questions about it. Well, you divulged, classified information. Well, no, I did not divulge classified information. Well, you talked about a missile site. Well, they're right there off the side of the road. You can see them all you want. I didn't tell you anything that's classified, and you can see it for yourself right through the fence. So there's nothing that I've ever discussed that's could even be held up as classified, and with US DOE ever.
No, I think that's really important to understand the nuances of that kind of thing. So I appreciate that answer very much. Let me get an idea of how you actually felt, because obviously this was quite a shocking incident that these things that you'd witnessed, the craft and these beings. So did that stay with you for some time in your mind? Like, what on earth did I see? Did it prompt you to look into UFOs at all to try and get some answers?
I immediately, of course, I'll just go back to that day, the next morning. I don't know how I could not, I couldn't talk about what I had seen. And I was just, have you ever been scared from the inside? Have you ever been just frightened on the inside of you, regardless of what persona you put off? Kind of like you can't let somebody see you sweat at a poker game. It's the same thing. You have to contain that within you. And how I knew to do that at 23 years old, I just have to attribute to my father, just teaching me growing up, you don't show your hand, and do all you can, but don't show your hand. Keep what you need to yourself. It's not the loudest. It's not the loudest guy in the room. You need to be wary of. So I just always try to contain it within myself. But yeah, immediately with the dreams and within days, the dreams, the having to find out about pyramidal structures uh, was just thrust upon me, like a landslide. And I literally had to read everything I could get my hands on. Every day, I just had to swallow something that kind of gave me information as to what I was seeking. Why the shape of a pyramid? Why were they built? Why has there no body ever been found in one of them? What are they really? I don't know. That's a real open question because it seems as if everything changed within my persona as the kind of person I would have been without this occurrence than with it, because every day I wake up, or sometimes at night I wake up and I see things in my mind. I see I have feelings uh, from that very night all the time. And back in 21 when I went there uh, with Discovery Plus, it was shocking to me. It really upset me, and and I said this before, it really bothered me to get out of the vehicle standing at November 5, and just that they wouldn't park down in front of the site because there's a building there, and you can see it on Google Earth today. I guess it's a cattle processing facility. And the only reason it's there again is the sites were built up on a bedrock, so they're very stable. And ranchers that owned the property, once it was given back to them from their 99-year lease, they elected to store their hay and food there for their cattle, which is very smart. Instead of their food and hay getting wet, in a low-lying area, this bed of rock that the whole site's built on, keeps everything up and stable. So, but that really upset me quite a bit, getting out of that vehicle and standing next to that road, even that was 100 yards down or so from the actual site. It really upset my heart, and hypnosis put me in AFib, and I swear that to this day. Never had any issues before, but in that hypnosis session, it's as if there was a curtain or something that I had to get past to see to the other side. It was always kind of foggy and hazy, but when I did, it just burst through. And since then, of course, there's been many other type, I don't know if you want to call them visions or things that I saw during that time. And I was hypnotized the second time just a year and a half ago with Yvonne Smith from CAARO, and a few more things. A lot of things came out a little bit different, not different, but more things came out to add to the first session. And maybe I'll do a third one day, but I think I would elect to be with her when I did it. And of course, she's in California and I'm here on the Eastern Seaboard. So when I get out there, if I ever have a chance to go again, I hope to meet her again.
Sure. So in 2017 to 2018 with the History Channel Unidentified, how did they hear about you? Because was your story available anywhere in the public domain up until then? Like, how did you link up with history to record Unidentified?
It was Robert Hastings, who's an author, who's in his second book, Confessions. He was asked to provide a few people or a few names, and mine just happened to be one of them. And they looked at my incident, and I was contacted by the network from that point, and we just carried on from there. And it was good. There was a few things I didn't like about it, but at least they came to my home and filmed, and it was quite an ordeal. But it was fun too. It was really fun, and I don't look down on any of those things. I really kind of accept them and just do the best I can do, because it needs to be told. And there are other people that probably have not come forward, just like my partner Michael Johnson, the other half of this equation. I just wish that everything I've ever been on, I wish that he would just come forward if he's still with us, because we've just not had any luck. And other investigators have tried to locate him, and he told me he was from Chicago, Illinois, and that's where his parents lived. He was single at the time, so I just wish that he would come forward and do his thing with me. I wish we could connect in that way.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the first time I heard about your story was through watching that series of Unidentified, and so obviously I found it so compelling to hear that testimony and what you'd experienced. So, did that change your life much? That now it was kind of on network TV and it was everywhere. Did you start getting contacted by media people and even the UFO community?
Yes, on all that, all that. So I answered, and I'm always, I always leave my emails so people can contact me, and I always try to answer anybody that I can. And if I don't get to you right off the bat, I will get to you. I just leave it there, and it may take me a week or two, but I will respond to you. And some people I've become friends with, and it's ongoing. So we have a continual conversation, and in some cases, we exchange phone numbers and talk sometimes. I got invited to a reunion at Ellsworth Air Force Base. It's in September to go out there, and it's a security police reunion. So I'm hoping that something may show up out of that, and I'm hoping I can go. It just depends on my work and so forth, but it would be a lot of fun to be able to do that and reconnect with some people that I haven't seen in 45 years, if I can even remember them. It's amazing people can be so close, but then years just kind of separate you again, and maybe they're not even as you remember them. I'm not sure, but it's a good thing.
It is, and you never know. You may find a lead to finding Michael Johnson at the reunion.
I wish. I really do. I've been on every media platform, and even Together We Serve, which is a military type platform that provides, connections to be made with past veterans or your old friends and so forth. But nothing off of that either. And then you can put out little search markers that you can, get off his name and so forth. And I don't have a middle initial, but one thing, as I told AARO, that I want to say that on our security police desk blotters maintained in the flight security controller's office, when you first arrive at a missile site, the first thing that's done besides relief is a new desk blotter. And back then, of course, it was on an IBM selected type typewriter, was initiated. And in that blotter would contain every single thing from the moment of relief that we arrived, say at 11:37 a.m., names, ranks, and social security numbers are on those blotters, or is on that form. And that's maintained for the entire time till you depart. It's not just one long form, but as you run out, you just start a new form. You just roll next one in and just keep going. So one picks up where the last left off, and they have to be maintained somewhere. If they were on microfiche and then later transferred to digital, I don't know. But in 77, we had we couldn't even carry cameras in the field. That was against our regulations to be able to do that, where everyone out there today, has got cell phones and so forth, but we weren't allowed to at the time. So everything changes, But that was one of my initial comments to AARO was, that blotter, that blotter exists somewhere, or copies of those blotters. And it would solve all the problems. It was, of any verification needed. Right now, the only true verification I have is Rick Doty saying, yeah, he was there at my debriefing. And that's all I can put forth. That's just the way it was.
Yeah. So, I mean, let's talk about AARO, because, could you tell me how did you contact them? Like, what was the process? How long did it take? And if you could kind of get into a bit of detail about the experience of dealing with them direct, that would be great.
Sure. No, I didn't do anything concerning them. They contacted me and by email and then by a phone call. And I simply responded to the email, and then that's when I received a phone call. And they asked if I would be in the area. Who would be in the area of Washington D.C.? I've never even been. I'm sorry to say that, but I said I'll do whatever you need me to do. So I was understanding that it was a, how should I say it? I don't know if you want to say it was classified, but it's a secured trunk of communication. That might be the proper way to say that. So that's exactly what I did. And that's how we did it. And went 4 hours and 19 minutes. And I basically told them everything which I've told you in the best detail I could possibly tell them. And I did tell them, what I saw out my right window, unlike what I told them during my debriefing at Ellsworth Air Force Base that morning. Because had I wouldn't have stayed in security police, I'm sure.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Begs the question, doesn't it? So, Wayne, what was the response like from AARO? Did they seem genuinely interested? Because, I've spoken to various people who have testified to them and obviously heard stories from others that, there were some people who didn't have a particularly positive interaction with AARO. So would you class yours as a good experience?
Yeah. The fellow I spoke with was a lieutenant colonel. I can't give his name, but he seemed genuinely interested and quite concerned, and left me with a feeling that something would be done, and what he told me as far as communications continuing would take place, whether it be a copy of everything we discussed. And I kept asking him, how can you write so fast? And others said that they didn't record it. They recorded it. Trust me when I tell you that. They did. They recorded it. And because he went back several times to ask me about something we talked about an hour ago. So how, either it was in front of him on some type of a machine, on a computer screen, or someone else was doing it, but you just can't recall a memory like that, and a perfect sentence per se that was repeated. And I really did. I left with a positive feeling that they're going to do something really good here. That's what they're supposed to be doing. That's what they're doing, and I felt pretty good about that. And then it was 2 weeks before what's his name, Kirkpatrick, went before Congress, and when he said that, man, my blood boiled. Regardless of what he thought of my incident or the lieutenant colonel thought of my incident, there are many others, that were done that they just kind of pooped on also when they said that, because these visitors, they can do anything they want to do, and they are monitoring these weapons for a reason. What the reason is, I don't know. They're long past splitting an atom. Maybe we don't fully understand, everything about splitting an atom. I'm sure our technology level is way down compared to where they are, based on what I've seen. And that's a hard thing to relay to people, because we're supposed to be the latest and greatest thing, in our little blip of time that we've existed on this world. But believe me, that technology is nothing that I don't even think we can humanly describe properly.
Yeah, for sure. Did you have any follow-up from AARO at all? Did you receive the transcript and documentation of the call or anything?
Not one thing. Not a phone call, not anything whatsoever. I've got an email and 2 phone calls from them, and that was it. Up to when I testified to them, and that was the end of that. And it really kind of just lets a person down that they tell you such and then not do what they say they're going to do. Because I don't know of any person that can tell the government what they're going to do or what they're not going to do and get away with it. You're going to do what they basically tell you you're going to end up doing. So whatever that may be, but it was really, it's just alarming what they can say and what they can do and get away with. I won't trust them again. I would not trust them again. And he also told me that if I'm ever up in the DC area, that I could stop by for a chat. And I felt that was kind of strange. At the very end of our conversation, just stop by for a chat if you're ever up in the area. I said okay. So
Yeah, that is strange. I mean, one thing, I've heard, obviously, we've all seen Dr. Kirkpatrick in the last year or so being quite controversial when it comes to AARO, but I've also heard a lot of good things that some of his members of staff are genuinely good people who are genuinely, interested and caring about the individuals and the testimony that they've received. So it's very difficult to say, forget about AARO, because it's a mixture of good and bad, how I see it. What would you say to that?
I would say you're 100% right. The individual I spoke with was a family man. He told me, and said he was doing this on a voluntary basis, taking time from his family. And I thought, well, I'm sitting here for 4 hours and 19 minutes taking time from mine too, in a way. So that makes us equal. And he just seemed really genuinely concerned, and we just carried on, just like just like you and I are right now, only a little bit different, but to just to get everything out there, and you have to agree to the terms, in which you're going to testify in. I mean, they read you, everything that you need to know, and concerning perjury or anything like that, because it's going to be part of a historical record. That's what I was told, and so there are ramifications with that for someone that's falsifying information, and there should be. So that made me feel good, and I thought that kind of made it official to me, and instead of just something hearsay that you just talk to someone and agree to something verbally and there's nothing behind it. But that gave it the impetus it needed for me for it to be real.
Yeah, and I mean, AARO is supposed to be an investigations team as well. I mean, you'd think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you'd think that they would look back in the record to see if there are any, I don't know, radar tracks from the area from that year at the time. Was nothing like that was that mentioned to you at all, that they would do that investigation?
I told them exactly how far Ellsworth was away from from the site itself, and we had we had an aircraft wing there. I mean, they have every capability. Believe me, their radars are very capable there, and so they got to use. That's why I was saying the resources that they have are just tremendous on how they could pinpoint a particular day in history and go back to it, with authority, and say, we need to see these records from this particular day or this particular week and month, and we can verify in between that. We can find this individual by his social security number. I mean, doesn't that make sense to you? I mean, really? I mean, unless he's not with us anymore, which would be terrible. But God, we've looked everywhere, hospitals, the VA. We've looked. Private investigators have combed through records and looked through everything we could possibly look through. The Freedom of Information Act's been used, and just everything that we could locate, everything that people could look at. And they'd call me back and tell me, well, I can't find anything on him. And there's people looking for him right now as we speak. And I don't know what else I can say. I don't know what else can be done.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I always like to think that sometimes, these people will come out of nowhere when you least expect it. Like there's always hope somewhere.
Yeah, that's the way I have to leave it with Michael, because, it's so weird that he was a vacation relief for my normal partner, Steve Welchel, who went home and got married in North Carolina. And Michael Johnson was sent from another flight to our flight to stand in for vacation relief. So we rode we went to Guardmount that morning, got on a bus at say 7:00, the whole, the whole flight, the whole squadron for all the different areas, and worked with him that day, rode the bus with him, worked with him that day. I guess he took a rest when we got there around 10:30, 11:00. And then we were on duty from 6 p.m. And then at 9 p.m. thereabouts is when I saw the object to the east. And then at 12:05 is when the alarm sounded to sit for. Arrived at the site, after we got our stuff, our issued items. Arrived at the site at about 5 to 1. Saw what we saw. Everything went black for 5 hours. He was in the state in which he was in. And then never spoke to me again for another. He never. That was it. The last thing I think he said to me was, "Whatever." When we turned south on Highway 79, when I said, "That's that object over there at November 5," because he didn't even know where November 5 was located. He'd never ever worked the 68th area before, so he'd never been in November before, and that was my normal work area and had been for a couple of years. So he said, "Whatever." I'll never forget that. Whatever. And then, of course, arrival of the site, and just what happened. And next thing I know, I'm sitting behind New Lake Reservoir Dam in the mud, and it's starting to get light outside, and he's frozen to a steering wheel. And then about 6:20 is when they came and found us. And back to the site. I never talked to him. He couldn't speak. So then all that transpired. Back to the base after a couple hours of grilling there. Then back to the base by my flight chief, Master Sergeant Gray, and in front of the commander and all that. Let to go after the flight surgeon's office. Let go after I finished maybe 2:30, 2:45. My wife came and got me. And then about 15 to 18 days passed, and he knocked on my door. And that's the first time I'd spoken with him since all that took place, since that morning in Guard Mountain. And I think about that over and over again, how random that was that happened like that. And I just wish I'd had his information all these years. And he wrote it all down for me, and I put it in my Bible, but to where it went, I have no idea. He just simply wrote down his parents' name and address, and it was Chicago, Illinois.
Wow, it's such a shame. These things happen, and with such a generic name, Michael Johnson. Unfortunately, there's going to be a lot out there, really, isn't there?
I know. I have searched his name in Chicago, Illinois, and surrounding area. I did that for when I got my first gateway computer, 93, 94, something like that. And back then, email, ding, 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 when you try to sign on, get on a router somewhere, just such hard times trying to search for anybody. They just didn't have the software out there.
I was going to say, have you ever spoken to Robert Salas? Because 10 years prior to your incident, 1967 Malmstrom, it's some similarities there. So what's your interactions been like with Robert?
Yeah, he's a good guy. His incident took place, 66 or 67?
67.
Okay, so 10 years prior to mine. And of course, he was at Malmstrom and I was in South Dakota. So, missiles going offline like that is I saw that happen at Ellsworth. So that's one reason I asked him, when we talked about that. Of course, all 10 of his went off. And I think at another time, more than 10 went off across their entire facility. All their missile sites. What I'm getting at there. I don't know when that was exactly, and don't quote me on that. But we had incidents like that, and also the flip side of that is when something starts to launch itself. Just randomly, all of a sudden the missile just goes into a countdown mode, and when the launch control officers kind of can't stop it or reset it or something, then there was a procedure that we used to actually, if it was more than one, we were just out of luck. But if it was just one, we had a procedure where we'd jump in our vehicle, a team. We were never alone at any site, at any response. You were never, ever alone. And we'd fly, haul out to the site and open the gates, put our vehicle on top of the blast door, put it in neutral, grab our stuff, our weapons and our ditty bags, and we'd run off the site and set up a 1 mile entry control point away from the site in case it did launch. Our hopes were that the blast door would move fast enough which it would, if the vehicle in neutral would roll down on top of the missile as it's trying to launch, and maybe mess it up a little bit to where it messed up its gyro. 1.5 ton vehicle falling on top of a rocket shooting up at it, would probably do some damage. And who's to say it wouldn't come toward us or parts of it? Who knows? But that was what you had to take that chance if that were to do that, to stop it. And of course, it would only be a conventional explosion or fuel if that were to take place, but it never happened. But the countdowns like that did take place where they were quite worried about them and would dispatch us. I know I went on at least 2 of those, maybe more.
But would you say, for something like Robert's incident where you're having 10 ICBMs all going down at the same time, and apparently these all aren't linked, they're on individual systems, and so it's not like one triggers the next or something.
Oh no, they're standalone. Yeah, that's the term. They're standalone. Each system is standalone. So yeah, for all 10 of them to go down is very peculiar. I mean, it can't happen, but it did.
I mean, I'm sure you've been asked this question a lot of times, and I'd be interested to see your answer to it. These, whatever you want to call them, these beings, this non-human intelligence, why do you think they're so interested in the nuclear sites and the nuclear weapons and capabilities?
I don't know. Maybe perhaps their yields, the types of the weapon, whether it's plutonium or a hydrogen bomb. I don't think we have neutron bombs any longer. And that was a very strange thing, if you know about those. But I don't know. Maybe how we split an atom. Maybe they associate what we know about weaponizing atomic energy, whether it be plutonium or uranium, in that configuration. Maybe there's something to that they want, that we're just missing, or that they see that relates to our technology level, perhaps. Maybe there's a lot more that these things can do that we haven't discovered yet, and maybe they're hoping we can't discover them. Or, they're, as others say, they're sitting out there identifying them, saying, you don't need to launch these things ever, and you have to think, well, what have they been through? I mean, regardless of how old their civilization is, but there's something, maybe they're even pulling energy off of them. Who knows? I mean, I'll just say this. What I saw above that site that night, in no words that I can tell you can describe the feeling of not only what that craft was, but the control over the immediate atmosphere that I was in, or we were contained in. Something that, say, or just put it in perspective, say a Super Black Hawk flies near your location, and all of a sudden, how does it have the capability of taking the air away from what you're breathing? Not from rotor wash or what have you, but I mean literally encapsulate an area that you're in and exert a force on you and pull the oxygen away from you. Nothing that I know has that capability that we can manufacture. The pure technology is just off the charts. And I don't know if there's a 100-year comparison, or it's a 1,000-year or a 50,000-year comparison between them. How can anybody say that what's between us?
It's interesting, though, to hear your response there. I really appreciate it, because it does go to show that, having witnessed something yourself and experienced those things, it doesn't point to us just having a slightly bit of, they say that some military technology is 10, 20 years ahead, maybe 30 years ahead. But, you're talking about something here that is just so far beyond comprehension.
And there's nothing we can do. I don't understand the crashes, though. That's one thing that bothers me is, you travel the distances of space, the vast difference. If they're something's traveling that distance to get here, or they can open up these wormholes. Who knows? Who knows? They understand that we can't even fathom that yet. We've got some ideas, but in science fiction. But it's funny how science fiction comes to fruition a lot of times too. But I just don't. It just blows my mind to think that something can come from such a far distance, enter our atmosphere, and hit the ground. I mean, just to traverse where they came from to come into the atmosphere and then to hit the ground is pretty daggone strange. And more than one, I've been told. What caused it to happen? Is it a lightning strike? Is it some say that we shot the Roswell craft down with a missile. Some say it was hit by lightning. And there were two craft, not one. There's just all kinds of things being stated. But what's the largest craft that's ever crashed? Do we even know of its existence yet? Are there archaeological digs that's going on right now pertaining to these things? I've heard. Don't know, but I've heard. But how can you have that kind of technology and impact the ground? Did they do that on the moon? Did they do that on their way here? Have they impacted on Mars or what? How does that happen?
So many questions, so many theories, and so much speculation. And it seems that the conversation these days, we've had David Grush come forward talking about retrieving these objects and even bodies as well, that it seems like if this is all true, that there are some answers somewhere within the bowels of the government or the aerospace companies. And this is why a lot of us are fighting for disclosure. But do you think A, that we'll get disclosure, and if we do you think B, that we can handle the truth?
I don't believe that our government will disclose anything, because they're too intertwined with the industrial military complex, and everything, as we know, is always weaponized. And the reason I say that, I came out of 14 years after the military with DOD, with US DOE. So I've been Los Alamos and General Electric Neutron Devices, Sandia, training there, Oak Ridge National Laboratory, the Y-12 plant, K-25 gaseous diffusion facility that's no longer in existence. That was all part of the Manhattan Project, which the K-25 site's completely been returned to green earth, and that's where UFO4 uranium was enriched. And but the Y-12 plant is still there, military designations, and the X-10 plant, which is the Oak Ridge National Laboratory. And they have a big new super collider, I understand. I'd love to get over there and see it. And they do have a museum there. If you're ever in the Oak Ridge area, they've got museums at both sites that you can go into as a civilian. And it's just miraculous. I mean, Fat Man and Little Boy are there. And, even Coors, from Coors Beer, they have a ceramic side for that. They develop some type of diffusers for lighting. And they've got their building right there in Oak Ridge alongside everybody else at EG&G, whoever else is there. And of course, when I was there, it was Martin Marietta and then Lockheed Martin. So it changes, the contractors change quite a bit, but security's still very prevalent there. And that's what I was part of as a lieutenant. And anyway, it's quite a place to go and see, but it just amazes me that of our capabilities of what we have and how everything seems like all these complexes are given a piece of the pie. I think someone else has said, and I'm going to have to say that too, to work on these items. I mean, I'm talking the super high level portions of this of these facilities, and nobody has the entire fixture. Everybody's got a piece of it, and they can run with that piece as long as they can figure things out. And when they can't figure them anymore, then they put them away for 5 to 10 years until new minds and new ways of thinking come around and smarter people, and they break them back out to see what they can glean from the past. So I don't think the government is, and believe it or not, once those things are refined and through these complexes, I think patents are issued on certain things. And then we as end users end up getting some of that, whether we know it or not. The cell phones we use, the microelectronics and computer chips in these computers, our communication systems, light emitting diodes, fiber optic. There's just billions of things that are used. And And look at the medical field. There's a lot of things going on in the medical field today that I think are direct derivatives of some of this research. But I don't think we'll ever get told right off the rip. I honestly, I think our friends will come forward, and I think that day will be a day in which they take over every form of media known to us and announce themselves, because they see governments. They see, in my opinion only, I have no other way to say that, but I think that they'll get tired of the bullshit and they'll say it's time for these earthlings to know what's really here and what we're really all about.
I think that's a very reasonable opinion to have. I resonate with that quite a lot. Now, Mario, I've really enjoyed talking about your story and everything that's happened since. But, is there anything that you feel, or any message that you always kind of want to sort of portray to people? I don't want to miss anything out of this conversation before we wrap it up.
I'd like to just say, keep an open mind. When you ask questions of people that have seen things or experienced things, not everybody sees what they experience either. There's a difference. Just keep an open mind and ask the questions that are uncomfortable for yourself to ask that person, because you might get an answer that may help you, and you may discover something about your own experience that you didn't think was important, but it was important.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good message. Well, listen, Mario, it's been an absolute honor. I've been, like I said, I've followed your story since I first heard it back when Unidentified it. You're a gentleman, and I cannot thank you enough for joining me on both of these occasions. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I appreciate being here.
Thank you. And to everybody watching, again, thank you so much, as always, for supporting Disclosure Team here. And we will see you on the next episode. Take care and goodbye.